Hello, everybody. We're Shane and Bane back with you with, I guess, volume two of three impactful albums that inspired our musical journeys. And Mr. Bane, why don't you
Yes.
get started with your next three of volume
Okay.
two?
It's an album I really love.
Oh, hell yeah. That's,
Abbey Road.
yeah.
I have to say, I didn't have an Ed Sullivan moment with the Beatles like Steve Lukather and half the world of musicians out there. Uh, they were on the radio, and I heard their early stuff. Kind of heard their experimental stuff. Some sitar in there, um, and had a few 45s, but Abbey Road was really my gateway into total absorption into the Beatles. And I actually stole is a strong word. It was on permanent loan for decades. I borrowed the album from my sister. In fact, I realized this a few years ago that it had her faint signature right under George here. And so when an anniversary remix of Abbey Road came out, I actually bought that, returned that album to my sister. She was appreciative. It actually hangs on her wall frame. So the album meant something to her, and I'm sorry I had it
Well,
for all
she
the.
signed it. You would think it meant something.
Yeah, but I think it's the Beatles' best albums. Even side two, which is a bunch of like odds and ends that were left over. I just think they peaked musically, experimentally. I think George stepped into his own on
Yeah.
that one. I just think it that's what really turned me onto the Beatles. And of course, I went backward from there, which is going to be a theme on these next two albums of mine. But I did go backward and get into more of their stuff. But Abbey Road still is my favorite album probably ever. If I was stuck on a desert island and I only had one album, I'd probably pick Abbey Road. It was a super impactful album of just musicianship, songwriting. Um, Love that album. It's a big one for me.
Yeah. Well, it's a big one for many, and you cannot go wrong picking that if you're on a desert island. I mean, for me, I think for the longest time, I felt like the White Album was my favorite. I mean, there is some filler in there, and there's some oddities, obviously, but over time, I do believe you. I think Abbey Road is their best album, and questionably the most iconic cover as well. I
Yeah,
mean, so we got to go with Abbey Road. So, all right, for my first pick, I
I'm,
was
I'm showing my tattoo there, Shane. So
well, yeah. See, look at that.
it's that iconic.
Yeah. So Bruce doesn't pick. I don't have any tattoos of any albums I'm going to talk about right now. So there you go. Getting back to a very impactful album for me in my musical journey. This goes back to and I'm going to maybe get this wrong, Bruce. Maybe you know this. 76, I believe, and it's Styx Grand Illusion. And I was very young. I was only 8 or 9, and but the songs from Grand Illusion just blew up our FM radio. And every kid, my friends, my generation, that age group, Styx was the band for us. And even at 8 years old, we understood what that meant music wise and everything. And we had for an assembly one day, we had the local DJ come to us and talk about like what he does for a job. And this was like in 76 or 7 or 8, I don't remember. And were at kids. It was a Q&A. Asked him, "What's your favorite band?" And all of us was asking him, "What is your favorite music you listen to?" And when he said Styx, we all blew up as if this was the thing. I guess Styx for us back then was kind of like our little mini Beatles. And but the songs on that album, "Come Sail Away," and to me, the "Fool in Yourself," "Angry Young Man," man, every time that came to the radio, that was just awesome. I couldn't get enough of that. And the Grand Illusion, of course, and then some of deeper cuts. Oh, right now it's escaping me. Superstars. For some reason, that song just blows up my brain. But highly impactful. Made me love that band like you wouldn't believe. It kind of waned when the Mr. Roboto years started. But back then, Man, Styx was the shiz for Shane. So that
Yeah.
was my number one.
Styx, also a good part of my soundtrack. Have several of their albums and really enjoyed them. This next album, I got to give some credit to FM radio. We had in Salt Lake a great FM radio station growing up. It's called Rockin' Stereo X. Skip Ward, great DJ name, was the guy, and man, they it was the epitome of a great FM station. They'd play the deep tracks. I remember every Sunday night, Skip would play an entire album. Often we'd roll tape on that one, and we'd always go back and buy the vinyl because we wanted it. We weren't just pure bootleggers on that, but that's where I first heard this album from Supertramp. It came
Oh
out
yeah.
April of '77, so I'm 17 years old, sophomore in high school, I guess. And even in the quietest moments was my gateway drug into Supertramp, and it is such a phenomenal album. Both Roger Hodgson and Rick Davies take turns with every other song is a masterpiece from each of those artists. Has some iconic tracks, Give a Little Bit, deep tracks like From Now On, Fool's Overture. I mean, it is such a great album. And of course, I had to go backward from there to Crisis, What Crisis, and Crime of the Century to get the full immersion into Supertramp. And then, of course, their next album took it one
Yeah.
step further, Breakfast in America. But man, Supertramp became one of my favorite bands, and this album was so impactful for me. And it really stung a few weeks back when Rick Davies passed away. I had forgotten how much I love his songs. I know Roger Hodgson's songs get a lot of the airplay and get a lot of the love, but man, Rick Davies' songs were absolutely tremendous. And the two, what a duo! Like I said, most of their albums they did every other song, and it was just it was great. And even in the quietest moments, an absolute masterpiece.
Oh yeah. And being younger than Mr. Bain, I wasn't Supertramp. I also regarded back as in my youth that young, like Steely Dan. They were like this more mature band that just was a little too complex for my brain.
Grown up music.
Yeah, it was. This is old people music. I didn't care for it, but Give a Little Bit came out, and I actually think it blew up on the radio with 77, right, Bruce? And I
Yes.
actually one of the first times I remember hearing that song was in the Superman movie. It was like playing in the radio, and the same year that was released. So it was kind of like a little bit of a drop there, and not. And obviously, Supertramp was popular enough to be somebody, but I didn't really know anything about them until Breakfast in America. Then everybody was assigned that album, and it was one of the greatest albums of all time. And I do recall one of the earliest 45s I also spent with my own money. I had to own the 45 to Take the Long Way Home. So that I did start to acquire a taste for Supertramp, but it took me obviously I had to mature into it. I wasn't going to do it until I got a little older. So great pick, Supertramp. So my next pick, I heard this album a lot on the radio, and it wasn't for until a year or two later until I actually purchased it, and it was very pivotal in my guitar journey, and that is the Cars debut album. And that album was pretty big for us because obviously Good Times Roll, Just What I Needed was huge in my little circle. My best friend's girl, I mean, moving in stereo. Yes, of course. As it was, we all love that song in its use of Fast Times many years later. But this is the album, the first album where I start pick when I was picking up the guitar, I could figure out how to play songs. And one of the first songs I learned was the Good Times Roll, dun, 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 and I was practicing where that sound was coming from those strings. Then I realized, oh, it's the same E string, the thicky and the thinny, as I used to call them. But if I hit them on the same frets, it's the song. And it became an easy, quick win when you're learning the guitar. And then, of course, figuring out Just What I Needed. We just all loved it. I mean, Cars were huge. My buddies and I, we were new wave. We kind of got the new wave haircuts during that time. We even made Cars hats. We were the first of our making our own merch before merch was even a merch. And it was a big album for me. The Cars debut album.
Ah, good one. Yeah. Cars, again, on the periphery. I like some of their stuff. Didn't rush
Not a
out.
big new wave fan at that time,
Well,
Bruce.
and I actually like Benjamin Orr's stuff a little bit
Yeah,
better
Benjamin Moore.
than Rick's stuff, personally. That's
Uh-huh.
just where I stand on that. Hey, before I get to my third album, I've got an honorable mention over my shoulder. Jethro Tull's Greatest Hits. Man, my buddies and I, we wore out the, yes, 8-track and the cassette.
Oh,
That album went everywhere with us, driving up to the reservoir to go cliff diving, just cruising around town. That album played constantly. Of course, Aqua Lung and Locomotive Breath, but Skating Away on the Thin Ice of a New Day, and so many other songs. Man, I loved Jethro Tull growing up, and that album, man, yeah, got some play in my life.
oh
Okay,
yeah.
my third album, this one came out March of 1980. Now, I'm going to get scorned for this, but I was not a big Peter Gabriel Genesis fan. They just never made it on local radio, I
No.
guess. They just weren't there for me. But when this album came out, Duke from Genesis, my goodness. Immediately fell in love with that version of Genesis. Just Mike, Tony, and Phil at that point. Misunderstanding was a big hit and was playing all over in the spring and summer of 1980. I fell in love with Genesis and had to go backward again. Got there, and then there were 3 albums: Wind in the Wuthering, Trick of the Tail. I actually don't own any Peter Gabriel era Genesis. And sorry, folks. Of course, I went forward with Genesis and followed them through and Phil Collins' solo career. But Duke, in hindsight, after I learned a little bit more about the band, I think is the perfect bridge between their prog side and their hit side of what they were going to become. They still played the longs. They still did the proggy stuff, even on even their very last album. But man, some of the stuff on Duke, I absolutely love, and the hits, the long stuff, and how they wrap it up with Duke's travels and Duke's ends. Just an incredible way to end an album. But Duke gets a lot of airplay with me to this day. I spin this album a lot on the turntable. Absolutely love Genesis Duke.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't own Duke, but it's still got its proggy moments, right? I mean, they're
Oh
still
yeah.
in they're doing they haven't
Oh
really
yeah.
blown up into be the pop Genesis that would come soon
Yeah. It's
after that. But to defend Bruce, and I, because we lived in the same market back in the 70s, there was zero Genesis airplay with Peter Gabriel. Zero. I didn't even know that was a thing for until actually early 80s when I was not even quite a teen, and I heard,
yeah.
wait, Peter Gabriel was in Genesis. I know how stupid that sounds, but we all I started hearing was that Duke album played, or the songs off that album was my first memories of Genesis
Yeah.
and from radio and all that. And then of course Phil Collins, I think destroyed the 80s with everything. And he owned that decade, regardless of what anybody says. Yeah, Duke is a great album from what I've heard. And I haven't heard it much, but
Yeah.
I like early Genesis, but that era. So, all right, my last album, and if you're familiar with this channel and you've listened to us, you've heard me talk about this before, and Bruce is getting tired of me talking about it. But my older brother is like I've talked about before, brought home it was, I would say this was close to my introduction to metal back then. Speed metal, I guess just metal, British metal, and it was Judas Priest Unleashed at the East. I've talked about this multiple times, but I cannot tell you how pivotal and important this moment, this album was for me. And I would say my buddies, because after that we started buying everything Priest, backwards and forwards and everything like that. I mean, the Green Man Alishi, Victim of Changes. I mean, there are some immense awesomeness, rock and roll coming off this live album. And it's a shame because, in the sense, there was that era in the 70s, mid 70s, maybe through the early 80s, where live albums were just big albums, you know? You got Budokan, you got Frampton, you got this, you got UFO, you got a lot of like classic live albums, and you just don't hear live albums anymore like we used to, right? Well, then again, the whole market's different. But for me, this album was so huge, got me into metal. Now, that's one other thing you might be noticing on our channel. Bruce and I have different genres we kind of represent sometimes. I don't think this is the genre that Bruce, Mr. Bane, really delves into, but this was a big genre for me. So, yeah, Judas Priest Unleashed in the East. Still love Priest to this day, but the Judas Priest of Rob Halford, Glenn Tipton, KK, the classic Priest, can never go wrong.
Yeah, metal. Boy, down the hall, my brother's room for sure. Didn't quite rub off on me like Shane's brother. My brother went on to become a disc jockey, and I remember he had the Metal Health Hour. He was the doctor in rock, and yeah, he's given me quite a few albums over the years, but I've never actually requested many metal albums. So, yeah, to each his own.
Right.
And anyway, that wraps up volume two of three each impactful albums for us. We'll continue to do this. Please comment on some of the albums we've mentioned today, and yeah, and give us some suggestions for some upcoming.
Let us know what your three impactful albums were. We love hearing it. So, three
Please do.
more.
We love building this community. It's a lot of fun, and thanks for watching. And we'll see you again soon.
See ya.